everyone, and welcome to the first Lessons Tutor Strategies webinar. I am Troy, and I'll be hosting today. I'm joined by Jim, who I'll be giving a thorough introduction in a moment. But first, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today and give a special thank you to everybody who put their hat in the ring to co-host and those who submitted questions to us beforehand. We might not have time to address all the questions that came in, but we're hoping to do more of these webinars down the road. And a lot of the questions that we did get actually gave us some new ideas for some other webinars that we might be able to do later on. So again, thank you for those. So for today's webinar, some of you might have seen a recent blog post that we posted titled 5 Tips for First Lesson Success. And what that was we recently conducted several interviews with and surveys and polls with active tutors and students within the WiseAnt platform. From all the research that we did, we were able to compile it all into a blog post, and we found 5 common themes that both the tutors who were having recurring lessons with the same student and students who were having more than one lesson with one tutor were able to identify for us. So today we are joined with our co-host, Jim C. He's from California. Jim's been tutoring on WiseAnt for since 2017. He has over 450 hours through our platform, and he's helped a wide range of students from kindergarten level all the way up to adult learners. And like many of the tutors probably joining in today, he's got experience handling each one of these 5 common themes that we've seen. So Jim, thank you so much for joining with us today. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to quick say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi, it's a pleasure joining you on WiseAnt. My name is Jim, and you can see my handle on the website. I'm Jim Corrier. I don't have anything to fear about the last name. And I've been working on WiseAnt since 2017. I found an ad in a place where I was trying to find some extra work. I am a credentialed teacher. I have a master's degree in elementary education, and I've worked in various forms of education from kindergarten to high school to colleges to Indian pueblos to prisons. So I've kind of lived education for the last 30 years. And I've really enjoyed working with WiseAnt because it gives me an opportunity to work at the most pristine level of knowledge, and that's at a one-to-one tutoring sessions. And this is where your skills can really come into play and how you can help someone else out. I don't look at it as a form of teaching. I look at it as a way in which I can help someone else out learn an idea that I'm familiar with.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jim. Most of you guys, or you should be able to see there's a Q&A section for you guys to ask any questions. We've got a lot of participants here today. So if we don't happen to get to your questions, we have a plan in place to follow up if we can to get to those at some point. I also will be sending a survey out afterwards for you guys to fill out. The survey will be to give us some feedback about how you feel the webinar went today. And there will also be a space to ask any additional questions that maybe weren't addressed also. So please, if you can, survey shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. It'll be very helpful for me and again, for the webinars that we plan to do down the road as well. So without any further ado, let's get started with our questions. If you're ready, Jim.
Absolutely. I'm looking at my notes at this time.
All right, great. So when we were conducting our research, many students let us know that when their tutor was able to communicate their process clearly before their lesson, that led to the student feeling more comfortable and allowed for a more productive lesson. In order to have a process for a new student, tutors typically would need to have somewhat of an assessment to better prepare for the lesson. Jim, can you describe your process when you're conducting an assessment for a new student?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a student contacts me, you know, as opposed to me contacting them because I already know what they're interested in. So let's just take a look at, you know, the prima facie approach of when somebody was contacting me, and I ask them what it is that they're in need of assistance with. A lot of times a student will send me an email and say, I need help in writing. I said, okay, so what does that help? What does that mean you need help in writing? Let's see here. Melissa says it's difficult to hear me. Um, well, when somebody asks me if I can help them, I ask them in specifically what help would they like. Do you need help in grammar? Would you like help in syntax? Do you need help in punctuation? Do you need help in mechanics? And then a lot of times they'll say, oh, okay, yeah, there are specific areas I need help in. And so then they will write down something to the effect, or they'll send me another text that'll say, I need assistance in working with conventions of writing, how to put paragraphs together. And then I'll send them back and I'll say something to the effect, we'll say, okay, great, let's take a look. Do you have a practice essay that you've already written? Would you mind sending that to me in a PDF form or just, through the Wyzant site, so I can take a look at what it is that how I can help you best. And I'm always trying to put the student in the driver's seat, because I want them to feel comfortable when they contacted me. I don't want it to look like I'm a teacher over the students.
Mm-hmm.
It's an equal partnership.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Well, one of the questions that we got from one of the tutors who sent us something beforehand, I think goes in line with this first question as well. And what they were wondering was if it's better to do a skills assessment at the first lesson or prior to the lesson. Then they go on to say that given a part of their initial pre-booking conversation with students surrounds the student's background, goals, etc. You might have partially answered that question, but do you have anything to add to that tutor's question?
Yeah, I think it would really be beneficial if you want to work with this student. I've always asked them what it is that their background is and what it is that they're trying to achieve by them contacting me. So oftentimes, a lot of my students are CBEST individuals. That means the California Basic Assessment Skills Test. These are individuals who are having difficulty with the writing sections of the test. And I ask them what areas in which I can help them best. So if I can get to know them before we log on to a lesson, because see, if I'm not understanding what it is that they need help with, and once we get onto the login and the session is done, they have just now been kind of deflated because you're not really sure how to help them or what it is that they're in need of assistance for. So I try to give them as much guidance as I can into the specific areas that I'm willing to chat. Sometimes I've chatted for a week with a student about what it is that he or she wants some help with.
Wow. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And it's definitely in line with a lot of things that we've heard, again, in the research that we were doing as well. Another question that we got from a tutor that I think I'll be able to address. It's a great question. It's something that we get a lot. And it was, how do we go about doing a free pre-lesson interview / assessment with a parent or student? And one of those ways is certainly kind of what Jim was just talking about, is messaging, hopping on a phone call. If you guys have exchanged phone numbers, is certainly an easy way to do that. And then also within the Wyzant messaging, there is a button for you to click where you can actually send out an invitation for an online demo, which is a pretty neat feature, which allows both you and the student to hop into the actual online learning tool. So it's a nice way to get maybe a quick assessment or meet and greet with the student, and also help them through any information they might or questions they might have about the online learning tool. So those are a few options. And then one question that I know that we get a lot too is, how do I record? How do you record the free lesson? So sometimes there might be some confusion with submitting your lesson after it takes place, even if it's a free session. You just simply don't need to submit those, and then the student wouldn't be charged.
Right. Yeah, and let's see, Troy, so underneath here I see the chat, and there's 4 questions. Would you like me to open those up, or are you working with those on your own?
We'll have some time to address some of those questions. The first thing I wanted to do was get through the main questions that we had set aside.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So
then,
yeah. Yeah. So again. Yeah, so again, I mean, as long as, and I think the real key is that payment confirmation. I give a great credence to the payment confirmation, because if there isn't a student that's not committed to having lessons with you, he or she isn't going to put the payment confirmation online. And so I think sometimes after the second or third communicate with one of the students who don't have payment confirmations, I'll ask them to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. And that makes sense. So I'll go ahead and move on to the second question. So one of the biggest benefits of having a one-on-one lesson is being able to connect with your student, of course. Would you be able to talk me through some of your strategies used in order to build a rapport with a new student? And what are some of the key interpersonal behaviors that you find most effective in creating that connection?
Yeah, right. I think it's really important to, assuage the students' concerns about what it is that they're wanting to learn and why they're contacting someone for tutoring. So these are people who have a great deal of interest in progressing through this context of information because something is dependent upon that, either a job or an entrance into some sort of university program. And what I attempt to do, and this has taken many years of learning experience in being in the classroom, is to gently guide them into why they want to learn this and how I can help best them learn. I don't want to take the approach that I'm going to teach you what it is that you're looking to do. I want to give them the guidance on what it is that how we can learn this together. And that can be done vis-a-vis my instructional strategies in showing them the best ways and the most easiest and most calmest ways of finishing this assignment. And sometimes in a learning session or a tutoring session, we only get half the work done in an hour. But that's okay because the student is the utmost position that you want to put yourself in is having that student feel comfortable with you.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Once the student feels comfortable with you, not just by your demeanor, but by your command of the topic. And not every topic I have a command of. I mean, there are some times I've made mistakes. I make them all the time when I'm writing or I'm doing a math lesson. But once they see that you are human and that you're willing to, take responsibility for that and say, but I can do the next one a little bit better. That makes all the difference in the world with having these students to have confidence in you. Because believe me, out of the 500 students I've worked with, if you admit that you didn't understand this question, but you can do the next 10 better, they're going to come back to you.
Yeah.
You're going to get a repeat customer.
Nice. We had another tutor question before the webinar took place that I think it is in line with this too. What are some strategies that you have to help make lessons more interactive?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been in the classroom for 3 decades, so I'm kind of an animist. I mean, I'm running around the classroom. I make jokes. I try to appeal to people's sense of dignity. And, I'll ask them, how are you feeling today? Were you able to practice this assignment? Let's take a look at some of the ways in which we can do this better. And, I don't like to use, we attract more flies with honey than vinegar. So I'm always looking at their work, and I'll do a preview. If somebody presents a 5-paragraph essay for me, I'll read through it first, and I'll say, that's a great essay. You have a lot of great ideas here. There's a couple areas in which we can do a little bit better with. And they don't feel so intimidated, like, oh gosh, this teacher's going to look at my paper and I'm going to get an F. That's not what they want to see. And if you do that quickly, there's going to be something else that's going to come up. They're going to go to another instructor, or not even come back to WISAT, because they don't want to be hit, over the head with a response. They want to be nurtured.
Yep. So that makes sense. We did get a question real quick about what are the 5 common themes. And so thank you for that. With those 5 common themes, there is a blog post recently. And what I can do for you guys is share that with you as well, because I do want you guys to take a look at it. But real quick, for those who haven't seen it. In a nutshell, those five common themes that we found with the research that we did were communicate your process for student assessment, connect and invite students to ask questions, collaboratively identify the goal and set measurable objectives, schedule your next and recurring sessions, and show your work. And of course, our blog goes in a bit more detail for each one of those themes. And the questions geared towards Jim today are kind of subcategories of each one of those themes. So we've already talked a little bit about how Jim communicates his process either before the session or sometimes during the session, first session, and then building a rapport with students. So thank you for that question. Sorry for not highlighting that right in the beginning. I'm going to move on to our third question, and then just again, I know some of you might be new popping in or missed the intro, but after our first kind of main crux of the questions, we're going to have time to go through some of the questions posted in the Q&A. I see a few that are in there already, so thanks for everyone who's posting in there too. So I'll hop on to question number 3. So it's certainly essential to understand a student's goal when getting started. Many times the goal of tutoring goes beyond just an improved grade. As you know, the benefits of tutoring are pretty vast. Improved confidence, de-escalation of behavior problems at home or in the classroom, and mentorship. Those are just a few of added benefits that you get with tutoring or one-on-one tutoring. Do you happen to have any strategies to help identify and track these micro and macro level goals?
I think one of the lessons I've learned in dealing with this Wyzant online tutoring is that most of the students who come onto this platform are going to be a little bit more attuned to their learning responsibilities, because they're not paying for this, unlikely, because at 16 and 18 years old, you don't have the finances to do this, or really the kind of knowledge or the wherewithal of getting onto this. Some do, I mean, not 16-year-olds, but the parents who bring their students or their children into this learning, this lesson of one-on-one, tend to have a little less of a behavioral concerns than those you would find outside of this one-on-one tutoring platform. Because they really have a necessity that, hey, listen, we're paying for this. There's a great deal of responsibility for you to behave here. And so I haven't seen too many problems in regards to having any large behaviorally disruptive actions online. I haven't seen one. But I have seen some micro kind of aggressions, and I'll give you an example. I was working with some students, and the young boys and girls, they like to turn off the video cam. It's a very passive-aggressive way in which it's saying, I'm done with this lesson. So I always try to get mom and dad's phone number before the lesson starts. So when they turn off the video, I'm there texting them real quickly and say, I can't see Joseph. Well, Maria's locked off. And when mom and dad knows that they're paying for this by the minute, right away that camera comes back on. So, and I always play it off like something happened. Maria or Joseph, you went off the camera, what happened? I don't ever become punitive and say, you turned off that camera, don't do that again. You know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good tip for, you know, tutors who might be working with students at a younger age level. It's probably always a good idea to kind of have a parent or guardian close by for things like that that can come up, whether it's a technical difficulty or maybe someone who might just be sick of learning. But yeah, do you find often that, you know, when you're working with students who might have not identified, so kind of going back to the question with, you know, most students, you know, certainly do want to get a better grade, or maybe that's the goal that their parents set for them. But sometimes, you know, students, I think a lot of tutors indicated students might want to increase their confidence in a specific subject. Do you have any ways that you kind of help coach students through keeping track of that, or maybe you keep track of it as a tutor?
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, I know one student in mind that I'm working with, and her goal is to excel on the pre-SAT tests. So I have been sending her some information that I've been able to get online with a teacher organization that I pay a monthly fee to, so that I have unlimited access to some of their lesson plans. And so every week when I send them out to her, we go through it, and I keep track of her scores. So I have a format in which we have the 20 questions, and then if this week she scored 80%, and then next week I expect her to score a little bit more or less within a statistically significant difference, 5%. And then I kind of graph that for her on the whiteboard and showing her progress. Or in a case that she, like one week she only scored 60%. Well, we're all going to drop sometime or another. But when people can see their progression, even if it's a degression, even if it goes down a little bit, it shows them that there's a sense of development of their work, and it's incredibly rewarding. And I do this every week with every student. I'm always trying to find a jewel in the rough in their work. This is a great sentence that you wrote. I really like the way that you structured this sentence. And you used a comma and the semicolon in the right place. You're getting better.
Thanks. Well, I feel more confident just hearing that. So thank you. No, those are some great tips. Thanks so much. I'll move on to our fourth question here. So many tutors, when we're doing our research, they indicated to us that they may not always want to put students in a possibly awkward situation by asking for the second lesson. Some tutors stated they don't want to come off as too pushy or too salesy, and that's totally understandable. We know that students seek one-on-one expert tutoring because they also want individualized guidance on the best way forward. So would you have any advice or any tips for other tutors on ways that they can secure their second lesson that doesn't feel disingenuous or too pushy?
Sure, yeah. Well, this came about, the way in which I'm able to secure students in the future, it's come about from a long line of learning where I would have one session with one student and would never hear from them again. And I would say to myself, well, how well did this student do? Or what did you do? Or why didn't I hear from them again? Because I felt that there was some need and some more assistance required in the topic that they were going to study. So what I do is that I look at what it is that their ultimate goal is in studying this topic. If they want to pass the CBEST, if they're needing to pass the entry exam, a college level exam, vis-a-vis either some writing assignments, any kind of basic math programs. And so that when they do that, I let them know that, one session isn't going to be a panacea. You're not going to be able to get your ultimate goal and acceptance into the college or pass this test with one exam. And I try to nurture them into knowing that, learning takes time. You have to retrain your thought processes to go from a place you were to a place you want to be. And the brain is the biggest muscle in the body. You just have to keep exercising it and retraining it. So I asked them at the end of the session, how did you feel about doing this today? Did you feel like you've learned something more? Do you like the way that this session went? And if they say yes, I will recommend to them, you need some more work on this topic, and I can help you do this. Because the students really don't want to jump ship from one tutor to the next. Consistency is a key, and consistency creates comfort. We all like coming home to the same place every night, the same routine. So once you can get the student to believe in you, then they'll come back and work with you the next time and suggest the next appointment for them.
Nice. Yeah, I liked that one. That was definitely something that I saw kind of as a common theme when going through a lot of the tutor responses that we got. And of course, I think a key word there is suggestion too, right? Not always a direct ask. And certainly we understand, and as I'm sure a lot of our participants here understand, that this won't always apply for every single student. But with that, to know what students it might apply for, are there any cues that you pick up on, Jim, that make it easier for you to know when you might start to, or you might know on your head, all right, now I think it's appropriate for an ask for a follow-up lesson or maybe some recurring lessons?
Yeah, I'm always going to do the work. I don't want to ever assume that there's going to be another assignment with the students at the next day or after the work. So when I work with them and I see that they may be in need of some further guidance, some further support, I don't really even like to look at the idea of being an instruction. I try to offer this as guidance and support in learning. And at the end of the topic, if I feel like I have met their needs for what it is that they're looking for, to become a better writer, to be able to have a greater understanding of how to use basic common mathematical skills, and there's more to be done, I will ask them, how would you like to carry this forward? Is another session in line with your needs? Would you like me to contact you again tomorrow to see if you feel comfortable with doing another session? Or sometimes I'll ask them, how about again next Tuesday at the same time? Are you available? And once they see that you have taken somewhat of a control of their learning, they're feeling somewhat dependent upon you because they want someone to care. And that usually leads to a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth topic.
Great, thank you. That was very helpful. I had a part two to that question, wondering about if there were any flags that tell you might need to adjust your approach, but I think you kind of answered it in that first question, but if there's anything you wanted to add with that in mind, feel free.
Yeah, and there's going to be times where, I've worked with students, their work wasn't well prepared, and they need an extensive amount of work in correcting like their writing topics, and you can kind of see in their the physical approaches they're not really highly interested in. And here's a key: if you want a student to come back with you the second time, engage them. Have them do the work on the site with you. Don't just rewrite the sentences or say this is bad or this is incorrect. Ask them what's another way in which we can get you to write this sentence better. And then once they start engaging themselves, they're not taking control of their work. They feel so much better than when somebody else is doing it for them.
Yeah. Well, that makes absolute sense. Thanks. So I'll go ahead and move on to our fifth question, which will be our last one before we hop into the Q&A. I see that we've got some popping in here, so thanks again, everybody. Feel free to throw some more questions in there if you have any. So for question number 5, our research taught us that tutors employ a variety of follow-up methods to build a tutoring relationship and help their student with continuation of themes and support. For example, that might be a summarization of the lesson, a weekly plan, study materials, external resources, maybe a small homework assignment. All those things can help. Can you tell us a little bit about your approach to post-lesson follow-up?
Yeah, once the assignment has been completed, and I ask them if they would like to, if they feel a need for another assignment, and if they were pleased and felt comfortable with the tutoring session together, not just with me, but do you feel comfortable with what we've done? Because we're developing this symbiotic relationship. I'm helping you to learn. So I'm just a conduit for what I can bring out in you. And then I'm a master at supplying post tutoring session materials to my students. I will offer them any kind of copyright-free material that I can get a hold of, and I do this really at my cost. There are times I do ask for a research fee for an hour's time, because that may be the length and the amount of work that I've done, and this has been effective. Most of these students will be glad to pay you for an hour's worth of research fees if you're sending them 15, 18, 20 pages of follow-up information for the topic that they're learning. They don't have to do it. Time is a valuable commodity. And so that's another way in which you can kind of garner a little bit. And so I will often go down the list of the messages that I have, and students that haven't contacted me in a week or 10 days, life happens. They jump off. Sometimes they don't have the fees. I will go through my messages and over, hi, Shariza, how do you feel? I missed your lesson last week. Is there something I can do for you to get back in line together? Let me know. Give me a call, send me a text. As another student, I haven't seen from you in about 3 weeks. What is it that, what are you missing? Remember your test date is coming up. Let's try to get a hold of this again. And I try to re-engage them with it. And I've had students, and I offer them my phone number once there's a confirmation online, and I ask them, you know, if you have 1 or 2 simple topics that you need for me to review, send me a text. We don't have to go online every time and spend $2 or $3 and all that energy. Send me a text, and guess what? My phone's ringing all day long. Can you correct this sentence for me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely something when I was looking through a lot of the feedback that we got from tutors and students, there's one thing that I was actually a little surprised about. And one of them was that the students, a lot of students actually mentioned that they did end up working with the same tutor again because of having some study material or just like resources for them in between their session. And then kind of to go in line with what you were saying with going through your messages and maybe messaging somebody who you hadn't heard from in a week. That was a common theme too. And a lot of tutors found success that way. Naturally, of course, it's not going to work for every student, but it's certainly a nice way to kind of refresh. Hey, we're still here as a resource if you need some help. So I think that's definitely a helpful tip. All right. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Jim, if you have any more to add there.
And just lastly, when I recontact these students, you know, a lot of them don't know how to start again. Some of them have been quite troubled with their lack of success or achievement in the topic that they're wanting to pass. I mean, I've worked with students with CBEST Math who've taken it multiple times, and I will kindly suggest to them, let's look at this one more time. Let me offer you a session without having you to pay, you know, so that they feel that there's somebody connecting with them. Because a lot of times if you're trying to get online with them, they say, oh no, another $35 on something that I haven't been able to accomplish in months. I will be glad to give somebody a 15-minute, a 30-minute lesson just to give them a sense of support that they know that there's someone out there that they can reach back to in some given time in the future.
Yeah, no, it's totally makes sense, and it sounds like that would be very helpful as a student. All right, so this next part, I want to talk through a few of the questions that came in, and we'll try and tackle a few of them. I have a colleague helping me kind of go through those questions, so I apologize in advance if we don't get to your question, but we'll follow up with you to help kind of talk those through as well. So the first question that we have here would be a good one right for you, Jim. So what do you suggest if a student is coming to the lesson unprepared, or if they don't send you anything ahead of time?
Okay, well, if they're going to come online with me and they don't have any work prepared for them, then you really have 2 choices: end the lesson or develop work for them. You know, and develop work with them, really. So if they come online and they say, hi, here I am, I'll ask them what it is that I can work with you today. How can I help you? Well, I have difficulty writing. Okay, do you have an essay that's been prepared for me? Can you upload it? Can you copy and paste it? No, I haven't developed anything. Okay, so then you're smart. You're supposed to be a little bit more prepared than a student. Pop up a topic. Be prepared to work with the student's needs. I mean, if it's math and it's not something that you're very well at, well, we all know how to add and subtract, multiply and divide. So again, you want to be in a position where you are seen as a nurturer of these students. And then even if it's 15 or 20 minutes of ad hoc assignments, they're going to feel so much more comfortable with you than saying, no, we don't have any work. We'll come back when you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would say too, oftentimes, one thing that I've seen with some other tutors I've spoken with over the years is, you know, there certainly are a lot of students who kind of reach out maybe in like want a lesson in 10, 15 minutes, and it definitely can be tough to kind of scrounge up some materials in such a short amount of time. So if you do have any packets or worksheets that you know have been effective for you with other students, I think it's always nice to have those on hand, just as maybe a backup if you do find a lot of students are coming to you and not prepared, and you certainly still want to have as productive of a lesson as possible.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
All right, so I'll move on to question number 2. Let me see, this might be a question for me. Isn't there a way to enter a complimentary session with the duration of the lesson without the student being charged for it? I mean, I might not be fully understanding the question, and I apologize in advance, but the answer is no. Sorry. I'm managing people typing at me as answering the question, but you can't answer a lesson for free. Sorry, so I think I might have misunderstood the question there. So that's the answer. Can't answer a lesson for free. I'll move on to question number 3.
Well,
Yep.
but I did contact Wyzant though, and you know they are not against you offering free lessons.
Sure. No, totally. I think the real answer is if you meet with a student and it is an assessment and it's a meet and greet or whatever like that, and you don't want to charge them, you absolutely don't have to charge them for a session.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
All right, I'll move on to question number 3. How effective is tutoring with one child and a parent who wants to participate in the session most of the time? How do you handle hovering parents?
I love it. I love having the parents next to me. I mean, because it puts a great deal of onus on the parents to have him or her take a look at their child's level of development in the topic that we're studying. I am working now with one parent, and the mother is in the room every time, seated next to the child, and I reference her multiple times an hour. And I will say to her, dear so-and-so, you know, did you see the way in which I approached this topic, or did you see the way in which your son answered this? This is the way in which he needs to do it throughout his lessons that I've been sending him. And so then she'll take an idea and she'll be able to support him through that. I think it's a great idea to have the parent next to him, and I request it as often as I can have it. A lot of times other parents want to be absent over it, and they say, you know, here's the student, they're absent from it, they walk away. And that's okay too, because then, you know, now you have a sense of trust from the parent. And really, you know, please, everyone, you know, when my business started to escalate over this is when I upped my, what would be the term when you do the background check?
Oh, yes, yes.
Have a current background check annually. When I first started here a couple years ago, it was $6.95. Now it's $15. I had mine done again in just January, February, and my contacts soared.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Definitely, we do have a lot of parents that will reach out to us, and if they do reach out to us asking for some tutor options, sometimes they'll just ask us if we can make sure they have a background check on file, which of course will be listed right on the tutor's profile there too. So yeah, that makes sense that you noticed a little bit of an increase by having that on your profile.
Sure.
Jim, I think you kind of actually answered this question already, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more on it, feel free. So do you charge for lesson prep time?
You know, I do on occasion. I mean, it depends on what it is the amount that they're wanting me to do. For example, if a student is in need of continuous studying for a topic, I do charge for that, but I keep it to a minimal charge. You know, for example, I have a student that's studying for the pre-SATs, and this student is quite brilliant of a young girl. And there's a website that I work on that allows me to do some printable copyright material. And so what I did was I downloaded and I printed out 5 weeks worth of her assignments, and I asked for 1 hour's worth of research time.
Yeah, um, that's great. In fact, that's exactly from what I've seen and what I think what our help center suggests is if you do happen to charge for any prep time or anything like that, just of course be upfront with the student. Let them know kind of what you expect, and as long as you guys agree on that beforehand, then feel free to move forward from there.
And make sure you put that in the notation plans where you said, where it talks about what your lesson was for the day. Make sure that you write it down that says, you know, Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Jones agreed to pay a 1-hour research fee for these papers.
Yeah. Yes, good call out there. All right, and it looks like question number 6 here. this might be this is a good one, I think. So, how do you avoid simply doing homework problems for students?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I don't think you can avoid it in its entirety, because really our goal as tutors here is to motivate the students to do the work that he or she is responsible for. I think that all of us want our students to perform well under our auspices, under our guidances. So there has been many times where I found myself thinking, geez, I did too many of these math problems and now half the work has been done. So I try to, you know, use 1 or 2 problems as a beginning, as a starter base for how the rest of the work is to be done. And I try to get the student to be motivated to finish the other ones together. I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where we can't do any of the work for the students, because then it's a stalemate. You know, they're looking at you, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and there isn't work getting done. But once the work is flowing and asking the student, how can you do this better? Is there another way? And a lot of times, you know what I'll do if I'm working with an adolescent and it's math, I'll do the math problem wrong. And they'll say, well, that's not the right answer. And I say, okay, now I got them. What is the answer? And then they'll go ahead and start doing it correctly. And then the next one will come up. You have to engage the student in any which way you can.
Yeah, no, I was gonna. I think that part of the answer to that question does lie with one of the themes, right, which was engagement, and certainly making sure that as the lesson progresses, and one thing that I saw in some of our research was a tutor mentioned something, just quick, simple questions like throughout, just to make sure they're aware that I'm hoping they're hearing me and I'm not just sitting and talking at them. I think, you know, sometimes it can be easy when you're in a one-on-one setting as opposed to a big lecture or a classroom setting. You think, you know, well, half my job is done because I'm already connecting one-on-one. But you still got to remember, of course, to ask those engaging questions and make sure that things are clicking too.
And it's not enough for us to just simply have the student look at us and say there's work posted on the board. You know, I mean, I want to be fulfilled in everything that I do in life. So I want to be able to see that this student has received something off of the lesson that they're paying me to do.
Yeah, great point. All right, so I think we've got time here for just one last question. All right, so this question, what constitutes assessment other than what are your goals?
Okay, yeah. You know, the assessment is also, and what I use is just that, you know, how are you able to put this work into context? What is it that you're going to be able to use this work for? And I can ask them, how is it that you're going to use this work in which you're trying to succeed in? And if they can answer the question succinctly, well, you know, I need to do this work to be able to pass this test, or I need to be able to write this essay because I want to get into the teacher training program, like what I specialize in, the CBEST. If I can get them to know that they have a level in which that they're needing some work in, then you can assess the fact of how much work they can do, how correctly they can do it. And, you know, demeanor plays a big role in this.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a, you know, your student's demeanor takes a lot, you know, you have to place a lot into it. Are they interested in doing the work? Do they want you to do the work themselves? Are they willing to work with you?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so that was all the time that I had. Sorry, managing my chat feature and the webinar. So I just wanted to quickly let everyone know that we will be following up with a few of the other questions, and I wanted to know some of the questions that were asked. So converting job applications into clients, profile enhancement, how to attract clients, online tool tips, and adapting to the current economy. So we see your questions, everyone, and again, I apologize for not getting to them in this webinar here, but we will plan on following up with you guys. So Jim, thank you so much for joining with me today and helping us all out here. I really appreciated all of your insight that you gave. It certainly was, a lot of it was definitely in line with things that we heard, but you were able to kind of expand a little bit more, and it's just nice to get the perspective from the tutor end as well.
And, you know, if there's a way in which Wyzant can develop this or something, you know, I'm open to receiving questions or give support to any of these other tutors that are on here so that I can help them become a better tutor and we can make this an even more successful environment for all of us. So yeah. Wyzant, the way in which they would offer me a private chat session or a tutoring environment, you know, I'm all for that. I'd be willing to work around that. And any ways in which I can receive some emails, not, you know, because the message board is strictly for the students. But if there's other people who need some assistance or some ideas, I'd be glad to be able to reach out to them and see and help them in any which way I can.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. One thing before anyone leaves, just wanted to say, you know, we certainly understand how all these tips will be able to apply to every lesson and certainly not every student, but we just really hope that you were able to take away at least one thing from the webinar today and perhaps try in an upcoming lesson. If you do happen to try any of these tips and want to share your feedback, feel free to send us an email to our customer support team and let us know. We'll be happy to see all that feedback and respond there as well. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining. Again, Jim, thank you very much for all of your help. And everybody, have a great day, have a great week. And from everyone at Wyzant, wish you all a happy 4th of July weekend.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.